Hello, America. Welcome back. Contradictions, episode 16. Man, we got a ton to talk about tonight. I got my boys with me tonight. We got Glenn. Where you at, Glenn? There he is. There he is.
On.
Hey, and then we got Kenny. What's up, fellas?
What's up?
How we feeling tonight?
Good.
Like I was saying, we got
feeling great.
A lot to talk about, boys. We got the BLM in Philly talking about, hey, not just defund the cops, but let's get rid of them. We got Kanye West trying to run for president. We got Trump meeting the Mexican president. And we got a lot going on in the sports world, right? We got Deshaun Jackson making anti-Semitic remarks. Or was he telling the truth? Because according to, what was it? Someone from the NBA guy, right? Or someone backed him up. Steven Jackson, that's who it was. Backed him up and said, hey, he was just speaking the truth. So we'll get into that. And then our quadrillion millionaire now, his girlfriend is steadily putting holes in condoms because she wants to have him for life. Patrick Mahomes. So let's get into it, man. Start us off. Glenn, what you got, man?
Well, here we go. So happy to be here. Thanks for being with us, guys. It is Wednesday, and let's first start out. Let's talk about Black Lives Matter in Philly. So Black Lives Matter met with some Philly officials today as well as yesterday. And they were going over defunding the police in particular. One of the spokespeople for the Black Lives Matter movement came out and said that she did want to defund the police all the way down to abolishment. This would be abolishment over the next 5 years. And what she is saying that is 5 years gives the community enough time to build the infrastructure needed for them to be able to police themselves, essentially. Okay. And so we'll just go ahead and start with that.
So, Kenny, is this, the first question right off the bat is, with no police, what happens if there's a crime?
Well, first, without changing the crime laws that you have on the books, I think this is a horrific idea. I don't think that it all comes from a bad place. But the idea that we're going to, and this is, again, the problem that we've talked about on this show many times, is the lack of a unified voice in terms of what defunding the police actually means is going to be a problem when you say that 5 years complete abolishment. And the quote was also that we don't want to have police in our community. We don't want to see any police in our community. That is, that all sounds good until you need police in your community. So I think that, with not having, if they don't do anything with the laws, and I still haven't heard anything in this whole interview that she gave, she didn't say anything about what they were going to do with the laws. Now, she talked a lot about drugs, which I think is important, having the proper channels to get people that are drug addicts help. The problem there is that when you have people that are drug addicts, where do you draw the line between personal responsibility, where they have to pay for it, and where the government's just going to start funding people's habits that we're getting away from personal responsibility in that area. I'm a little bit concerned about that.
For sure. And totally understandable. It makes perfect sense. Just to touch on that a little bit, what she actually was saying, and just to be clear, they're not talking about just abolishing the police. They're talking about defunding the police over a period of 5 years. So in 5 years, they want no police, but they would slowly progress to that point over a 5-year period. So it's not just like cut them off, give us 5 years of whatever the fuck, and then, come back and reevaluate. That's not what she's talking about.
Not total anarchy. Not total
anarchy. She's talking about gradually defunding the police to the point of abolishment after a 5-year period. So with that being said, so just to kind of touch really quick on the drug thing that Kenny was talking about, I do think, and one thing I do agree with Kenny on is that, she didn't mention anything about changing any laws on the books. That's got to happen. There cannot be as many police interactions for petty crimes if you're talking about defunding and abolishing the police, especially
that's probably
once the police know that they're going to be
defunded. That's probably year one, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's going to be year one. That's got to be before year one even starts. That's got to be, if this thing passes through, that's got to be.
So are they actually bringing it up for a vote in the community?
Well, the community has actually voted on it. It's electing the city officials that are going to put it through. As of right now, they don't have a lot of support well, what they do on one side, but I guess I should say they don't have a lot of bipartisan support. So, and it's understandable. I mean, it has become somewhat of a dichotomy where people are on the side of maybe a Kenny per se, where they're like, it's not going to work. And Kenny doesn't totally disagree with defunding the police, but the way we've talked about it is the way it would work, and it has happened before. It has worked before, so we actually have proof that getting rid of some laws on the books would work. Or you have people that are on the other side that are trying to look in between the lines of what she's saying, and I do agree with one of the things that she did say was that a lot of crimes are based off of poverty, including drugs. A lot of times, it's just down to the nitty gritty. When people's basic needs aren't being met, they're going to be more susceptible to committing a crime. Also, when people's basic needs aren't being met, and they don't really have any outlet, or they don't feel like they have a perceived outlet, they oftentimes will turn to drugs. Not that it's an excuse, but they'll turn to drugs as maybe a coping mechanism or an escape. So again, if they're defunding the police over a period of 5 years and they're allocating a lot of these funds toward community organizations that are going to specifically tackle the needs of that community, of that specific area, as well as putting it into schooling, because let's be honest, a lot of these schools that are in inner city, programs and inner city schooling, they're still operating off, they got lead pipes going on. There's asbestos and things still in the ceiling. So
I just want to interject.
Not good, but yeah, go ahead.
On a couple things. One, it's very frustrating because I almost feel like if people really wanted it to work, they would see the same thing that we've discussed on this show multiple times when it comes to changing the legal system. I think there does, she started getting into blame a little bit when she's talking about the lead and stuff. Not that it's not an issue at all. I don't know. It depends on the schools.
It's definitely an issue. You don't want to be drinking out of lead pipes.
No. What I'm saying is it is an issue if I asked you how many people died of drinking of lead pipes in poor communities, we don't know what that number is. I don't think off the top of my head. And there's a lot of regulation around it. So most of that stuff gets done up it's a government contract job. I've worked government contract jobs. They are the most nitty gritty when it comes to that stuff. So they're going to chew that stuff up. So I'm not sure how much of an issue that is today. This isn't the 1970s. I don't know how much of a lead issue it is. And I doubt that it's a bigger issue than the other issues they have in the city. Now, she brought up hunger. And that's one of the things that, it's really frustrating me how much I hear about the hunger stuff, because nobody should be dealing with hunger in this country. And for the most part, there are programs almost everywhere you go when it comes to getting food. And a lot of this, when children are going, and I've done rants on Facebook about this, where if your kids are not eating, you're a piece of crap. Like, there's some exceptions to every situation.
I would agree with you there for sure. And
as a whole, we have to take some responsibility. And my concern is in this, I just didn't see where, if, first of all, and maybe because there wasn't a counterpoint in it, but I would like to know, I want some litmus tests along the way. If you're going to take away fade out the police department, you have to be realistic and have something set where you can say, okay, if we're in this thing 3 years, how long are we going to wait as that if the crime rate goes up? Because it's possible that it goes up and then comes back down, right? So how long? What is our litmus test? What are we just going to have it not work and then blame racism or blame this or blame that? Like, what are we going to actually do so that when they start doing this, then we can go, okay, is this going to work? We've talked about it before. The process they used in New Jersey, I think, should be the platform for how they do it. But then New York argues they did it different. And, there's certain things that
New York and New Jersey are they're two totally different places. I don't really know why. We shouldn't be trying to compare those two states whatsoever. Just because they're right next to each other, just because they're technically the Northeast, I don't really get that. But really quick, so in terms of what you kind of said in the beginning, Kenny, when you were talking about a lot like kids going hungry and things like that, For sure. In this country, especially children should not be going hungry. There are several programs across the board, but I will tell you that if you actually look on the books and if you look at who's committing most of these crimes, and we've kind of talked about it before, everything has a rolling effect. So, shit rolls down one hill and it usually connects to another hill and indirectly affects something else. So prime example, it's majority, at least statistically, it's majority Black men that are committing these crimes. So if you take what most Black men in inner cities are going through, and we've talked about it, being a father, extensive child support, not being able to necessarily get a job if you have a felony on the record and things like that, these are the things that a lot of these communities are dealing with. And sure, maybe on the surface, they may have been a person's fault in the beginning, but it's like to consistently condemn somebody that served their time, that's paid their restitution, that went through their parole and their probation. Now they're trying to do the right thing. They can't get a job. They've got mouths to feed. They've got child support chomping on their ass. It's like, well, I'm going to go sell some rocks. You know what I'm saying? Right? I get it. And so I think that's what she's really talking about, is tackling some of these issues and funding some of these these locally community-based agencies that are going to be handling the specific problems and specific needs of that specific community. I think that's really where she's going. But yeah, again.
So you're saying it needs to kind of be a community by community thing? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I believe it needs to be a community by community thing. And we've also touched on it in other episodes as well, too, where even if they did have police, and maybe for the 5 police that they're defunding, or for the 5 years that they're defunding the police, I believe that police should be, communities should be policed by their own citizens that are of that community or in that community. I was literally just watching a video where an officer had stopped 5 Black kids for walking through a cut through. He was walking through a cut through of a neighborhood, and this officer had no idea that it's a cut through. He's chasing down these 14-year-olds with his gun drawn, and they're just coming from the corner store with like their bag of Fritos. It's like,
right. I've actually been through that. My son actually went through that not long ago here. Same thing with a cut through. And obviously, y'all know our neighborhood that we all grew up in.
Full of them.
You're always trying to find a cut through. I do want to get on Republicans for a minute while we're in this conversation, because when I drove to Jacksonville the other day, and this pisses me off, like, we've got to be able to have a real conversation, and Republicans are refusing to do it because they're just stamping this law and order. And I feel like the left is so worried about trying to pump up the organization Black Lives Matter that they're trying to be like, we don't want, this abolishment. Like, that was a poor word for her to use. We get on Trump for his words all the time. Abolishment is a tough word when you're going to use the police. But these two things got to be discussed, because the other day I'm driving down to Jacksonville, and I'm going down with my daughter. She's looking at my phone, and it's got the waves, right? So you see all these cops, right? And it's like, how come when we talk about defunding the police, everybody wants to talk about rapists and murderers going free, when that's not even what most police officers do? That's what I wish police officers do. That's why I want police officers to be more at desk jobs, doing the investigation, all the stuff that actually, if you read the research that happened in New Jersey, the reason that was successful, 60% increase in the charges that they filed in serious crimes, because more people were helping do the research. I'm driving down the road. There's 500 police officers. They're all sitting there BSing with each other, trying to catch somebody speeding and trying to find crimes. And it's infuriating to me because I can't yell it any louder. And the Republicans don't want to listen because they want to say, if we don't have police officers everywhere, the world's going to go to shit in a snowstorm.
Fear-mongering.
Yeah, it is. It is fear-mongering. Yeah. But then when you have the other side where you go, okay, so I'm going to go listen to what these liberals say, and they're like, well, over 3 years, we'll just abolish the police department. You're thinking, shit, I've been robbed at gunpoint as well. So, like, I don't want no police. And then I think, how are they going to solve crimes if they take money away from the police? And so I'm mad at this side because they're not being realistic about, we do need funding for police, but for more serious crimes. And it all comes down to more serious crimes. And it's very irritating. I was thinking about it as I was driving. I see all these cops all the way along 95. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to catch drinking and driving over July 4th. They're not trying to solve a rape. They're not trying to solve a bank robbery or an
trying to ruin someone's life.
A molestation victim. They're trying to get money in their pockets. And it's so frustrating. And we've got to hold our people accountable.
Discussion, right? That's the big issue, right? Instead of defunding the police, let's refocus the police.
Well, and this is the thing, and I think on the surface, Fred,
I'm a conservative. I like the idea of defunding some shit. Like,
and it does, and it sounds so resurfacing, sounds good. Defunding definitely sounds good. Abolishment, it just doesn't have a nice ring to it. But I don't
slavery,
disagree.
it shouldn't be abolished.
I mean, come on, man. No police. Like you're gonna leave it. You're gonna leave it up to the normal everyday citizen to police their own.
Well,
like,
I don't think that's what. Again, that's not what she's. That's not what she's saying.
Do you believe though? Do you believe that if you know how when they talked about leaving war zones, right? And you leave war zones, you can create vacuums. Do you think that same thing? If they tell people, hey, in 5 years we're not going to have any police here, and I'm a drug dealer, and I go, man, if I can kind of hold out 3 years, circle back in, do this thing slow, there's going to be no police, and I will have less.
Let's be honest. So you can't have it both ways. I mean, we've talked about it on the show before, Kenny, where you were even saying yourself that, when it comes to drugs specifically, you would rather them just be legal, right? Because let's be honest, if I want to go get high, no police officer is stopping me, right? You can maybe catch me with some shit after the fact. But that's the other part, too, is that police officers are not paid to fight crime. They're paid to respond to crime. By the time a crime has gone down, you're already a victim. You're calling the police to let them know what happened, right? So for one, I don't hear any guns rights activists at all that should be saying, execute your Second Amendment rights. Exercise them. Everybody should have the right to protect their family. I don't see anybody coming in and saying that. On the other hand, what she's talking about.
What do you mean? You don't hear other people saying that?
Yeah, I don't hear anybody because look, and I don't think
all Second Amendment people want people to have guns.
Yeah, and I think
people are legally own firearms.
I think the left even said that they were like, hey, you don't need guns because we have cops. And now we don't have cops.
That to me makes
so that's what I'm talking about. So look, and that's why nobody can get shit done, because on one side you have people talking about, so for example, take Breonna Taylor, right? I haven't heard a single guns right activist come out and speak in on the side of Kenny Walker.
Yes, I've only heard that whole bunch did. A whole bunch did.
After he was released from jail.
Hold on. Glenn might not have heard it. There might have been a lot.
You might not have heard it. No, on the news never
reported it.
A lot of people were in support of Kenny. He got off.
Well, yeah, a lot of people were in support of him, but I didn't hear any guns rights activists. I'm talking about guns. See, when the black community talks about exercising their Second Amendment right, it's usually a different story. It's usually padded as violence, or we're being violent rather than protecting our family. So that's the other part that I want to talk about. But just to get back, that was just a side note. To get back to the actual subject. So in terms of abolishing the police, what she's talking about is defunding the police and then putting that money toward areas. So if we take that drug dealer, because we all agree, I think that drugs should just be legal anyway. It's a petty crime. Shouldn't be locking people up for drugs. Well, if you take that money and you allocate it to community organizations that are going to take care of the needs of that drug dealer. So maybe that person doesn't feel like he has to go sell a rock. Maybe he has a decent job, a respectable job. He can take care of his family, feed the mouths in his home. That's what she's talking about. And over a period of 5 years, if that is done, along with, as we agree with, taking some laws off the books, reducing police interaction over those 5 years, I do think that by the time 5 years comes around, they would have a pretty strong chance of giving it a real shot at a policeless society or a policeless community.
Hey, so we got one of our users sending a little message here, and I think he's agreeing with us. Let's see what he says here. We got Dave. Truth be told, you got to admit some of the petty crimes open up the bigger ones. Maybe just if the petty crime is just that, lessen the penalty. What do you think, Kenny?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've talked about for a while. I think we're in agreement. I mean, I'm big on, if a fine is a finable thing, there's ways to be able to get fines and penalties. And, there's some truth, I think, to how fines, they're very unfair to the lower class. When I grew up, if I got a traffic ticket that was $200, my life was done. Like, I was worried about losing my car at that point. But if you make, $200,000,
you were like, damn, that paycheck is gone.
You
on
get
the
a $200 thing. You're like, all right, no big deal, right? Like my penalties to me now don't compare to what my penalties were when I was 16. So I do think that they should maybe tier that a little bit differently, as some sort of percentage or something. But I do think
it does make sense if you're a young driver and it's your first real offense, not like speeding or running a stop sign or not wearing a seatbelt, but your first real offense like a DUI. Maybe they should do something.
Hey, this is a little bit off topic, but only because Glennon had brought up Breonna Taylor's name. I got into a debate today on Facebook, and I don't know if Glenn saw it or not. I wasn't sure if he brought that up because of this or not, but it's very frustrating when you try to have an argument with people. And we've had this discussion before, but I just want to bring this up for listeners out there that it is so disingenuous to immediately connect a consequence with a choice. It doesn't quite work that way. And I'll explain what I mean. So for instance, for people to say, well, Breonna Taylor being involved in a drug organization does not mean she should be shot to death. Of course, everybody agrees with that. 99% of people agree with that. So that is such a bad argument. And that's what people immediately, if I say anything like, hey, you start doing that, right? If I told my kids, if I'm talking to my son, right? I got a 14-year-old son, and I tell him, hey, man, look, if you get in a car with a guy that steals a car and you guys are driving around and the police shoot at it, right? And they shouldn't. The police should be held responsible, but you also shouldn't be in a stolen car. Like if you knew you were in the stolen car, you don't get to pick your consequences. And it's very frustrating because some of these people I'm debating with have kids, and I'm thinking, how can you tell your kids, well, that's not fair? Yes, of course it's not fair. Like,
all right, so just really quick. So you brought up just to touch on it before we go too deep down the rabbit hole. So Breonna Taylor is not even a real topic, but yeah, we can certainly discuss it. I think what you're really what you're premising your main argument on, Kenny, is that she may or may not have been. I think you're saying she may have been a drug dealer. So I'm gonna just be honest here. So
well, are you saying
her name was in the affidavit, but if you actually do the research, that doesn't mean much. For example, if I let somebody into my house, but I'm the homeowner, and I let somebody stay with me for, say, 6 months, and they're sleeping on my couch, but they're not on any paperwork. But as it turns out, the person that's sleeping on my couch happens to be a drug dealer, right? My name, because I own the premises, is going to be on the affidavit. If I'm not on that warrant, though, you can't go out. You can't say that, hey, I'm a drug dealer. Or I have any.
He's on the warrant. He's 100% on the warrant.
No, not the warrant that I saw.
Yes,
no,
I said he wasn't on the warrant.
100% she was on the warrant.
No, she was on the affidavit.
Yes, I'll send it to you. No. She was on the warrant. I'll send it to you. I have a copy of the warrant.
But regardless, you're guilty by association.
But that's the whole point.
For sure.
That's my whole point right there. It doesn't matter. I don't care if she's completely innocent. I mean, if she was completely innocent, that would matter. That would matter. But if you're not completely innocent, all I'm saying is that you don't get to pick the because the argument that was being made earlier.
If you want to play the game, you might not know how the game ends, but you decide to play it.
And nobody thinks that. It's kind of like when people said
the reason why that doesn't apply in this case is because you're negating so many other things. For one, you're negating the runaround
that they gave her mother.
You're negating
So listen, if she's
not a drug dealer, she's not dead.
If she didn't have any drugs, or anything to do with drugs,
drug dealer, she wouldn't be dead.
Yeah, right.
Well, she wasn't dating a drug dealer. Kenny Walker's not a drug dealer. That's her boyfriend.
They can call him her boyfriend, but she was living in the drug dealer's home, and she had previously been his girlfriend. So I understand that
lease. They were separated. She has a new boyfriend named Kenny Walker, who was a licensed gun carrier. They didn't find a speck. The autopsy didn't find a speck of drugs in her system.
Correct.
Didn't find no drugs. She doesn't do drugs. Didn't find no drugs in the house.
We all knew. We all know she was the middle person.
She doesn't.
Look,
it's not an automatic assumption. No, I'm not assuming anything.
We can assume all we want. You have to assume. They
I'm
didn't
not assuming
find shit in the
anything.
house.
I'm looking at what the warrant said and what it said that they have proof of. Now, if they don't have proof of what they say is in the warrant,
they have proof of her accepting a package that was in the ex-boyfriend's
multiple
name, but they don't know what was in that package.
Packages.
But they don't know what was in those packages.
And delivering to UPS. Well, we can debate that.
Did they get overzealous? Did the cops get overzealous a little bit?
Absolutely,
I think so.
Yeah, hold on. Here's the thing: the cops, to me, did nothing wrong. If you want to argue about the legislation of it, but the
laws
police
allow
themselves, all three of us would have done exactly what we were trained to do. If we're told to come to the door, and then these two guys were not. These were not the investigators.
So let me just ask you a simple question. So you agree that when the door was busted in, you do agree that Kenny Walker had the right to fire off that warning?
Sure, of course.
1,000%.
Okay.
Me and every gun rights activist that I know was super pumped up. He got out very quickly.
Right.
He got completely
it wasn't
cleared.
very quickly. It was like 4 days.
In terms of they held
not quick.
I don't think it was. I'll have to.
But it's quick. It's quick in incarceration.
It's pretty quick when you shot rounds at a police officer. That's pretty quick.
That's the thing. No-knock warrants need to be abolished, since that's the word of the evening.
Hold on. What's funny is the no-knock warrant. Only because they announced themselves did he shoot them. That's the irony, is that they did. Well, it depends who you want to believe. You can believe.
I believe every single witness of every single apartment that's in that complex that said there was no announcement.
The witnesses in the morning. The police said that they did announce. If they didn't announce it,
and as a matter of fact,
why would he have been up at 2 a.m?
Because they had to, because they hit the door.
Instead of us guessing, let's just assume.
Right,
let's do two arguments. Let's do two arguments. They
hit the door with the battering ram. They hit the door with the battering ram.
Let's do one where they didn't announce. Let's debate one where they didn't announce.
Okay,
let's debate one where they didn't announce.
So all of the proof says that they did not announce themselves, according to witnesses of the apartment complex as well. What actually happened was they hit the door with the battering ram twice. The first 2 times didn't bust the door open. The third time it busted open, we've got witness testimony as well as testimony from Kenny Walker saying that they kept boom, like with the battering ram. Who's there? Who is it? Boom, they're scared.
All right,
it's 2 in the morning.
So they didn't announce.
Right. So door bust in. Kenny Walker licks off a warning shot. All of a sudden, the officers licked off, and that's.
I noticed. So here's the thing, right? So this is where the bias comes in, right? He shoots off a warning shot. Nobody knows what he shot. He just shot the gun. Whether it was a warning shot, he shot it.
If it was me, I would have been.
If you're on the receiving end, if you're on the receiving end of that warning shot, you're gonna shoot back.
Of course you are. Everybody is. And it's I believe it's extremely unfortunate for Kenny Walker, and I'm glad that he's alive. Okay. And there's issues with the entirety of the story. But the issuing to me, the police officers did, so they had a no-knock warrant. So let's say they didn't knock, and that's what the neighbors said, even though, again, we can go down.
Hold on, we're still debating.
So there's no knock. He goes, they get a shot, they shoot back. We've talked about it before. The policy is you shoot because you don't know which rounds are coming back. Then once you're reloading is where you listen. And then he obviously was like, hey, I'm here. They come in. He's alive. She's been shot to death. First of all, the whole situation is terrible. And the warrants themselves, I have a problem with. Whether you want to get in a no-knock or knock, my problem is the police better be damn sure, because I don't like the idea of them ever coming in your house unless they have concrete evidence. And that's where the investigator did a poor job.
I'm looking at the warrant right now, and that's one of the main issues that I have with this whole thing. Again, I see Breonna Taylor's name as the owner of the house, the lessee, but it doesn't say her being investigated for any sort of crime, and there's not an arrest warrant in her name.
I think Kenny's main point was.
I just said her name was on. Kenny wasn't even on the warrant. Okay.
So
and according to what the request for warrant said is that the request for warrant said that they had this evidence. Again, if they don't have the evidence, then of course I have a huge problem with it. I'm a libertarian.
Okay,
I don't like to get in the doors.
Listen, you're
all
gonna
I'm
always
saying is that the people
So who should be
focus
held
on the
accountable?
wrong thing.
So who should be held accountable then? Because the evidence
Well, I
was
think
janky.
yeah.
The
to
investigation
me,
was
I'm
janky.
okay with
the recon sucked.
First of
So-
all, the judge shouldn't have signed the warrant. So I think the
Nope.
judge should be held accountable. I think the lead detective should have been held accountable. And then I think Breonna Taylor has to take some responsibility for a situation that she could have avoided and didn't. Now, does she deserve to die? No, but it
We
just
all
gets
know
annoying
that.
to hear that
That's
argument that people
That's
immediately
so everything.
come to.
The first 2 points you made, I agree with. Why does Breonna Taylor have to take some responsibility for picking up some?
Because
packages?
if my child is again.
Come on, Glenn. You know what those packages
I'm
had in
just not
them.
buying the bullshit.
I don't know nothing.
Yes,
I believe
Yes,
that
you
based on,
do.
I don't think most.
I plead the fifth.
Or whether you think she knew anything about it, she just
You
looking at
know damn well what she was doing.
I don't talk to the police. I don't know.
That's my point. Look,
He was just trying to get
I
a
don't
little
know
ahead of the
nothing,
game. I get it. She was just trying to get that little advantage.
Right?
Look,
You know,
there's a lot of blame to go around. But my problem is people say the cops are to blame. It was racist. I've heard that, and I go, in this case, the issue was with these people over here, and you're trying to get the guy that, like, let's take it from the cop standpoint just for a minute, right? So you kick in the door. Again, you've been told, because let's be real, these guys are told that this is a drug house. They're going to find drugs. They're going to find guns. They got to be careful. You know, they're like, okay. Then they kick in the door, and all of a sudden it's like, bang. And they're like, shit. Bang, 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 bang.
So just to touch back to the original point in terms of abolishing the police over 5 years, this is exactly why. This is the stuff, because police officers, for one, they're humans. For two, when it comes to the black community, and this has been proven time and time again, they have a history of lying, planning things, especially if we talk about the Baltimore police. I mean, good grief, we'd be here all night. So police officers have oftentimes committed more of an atmosphere, created more of an atmosphere for a criminal presence or a criminal sense of mind in terms of the police. And when they're busting in there, they're thinking this and that's going on. It's just a family, an EMT. And a boyfriend, right?
And again,
it's inexcusable.
Well, like Kenny said, though, I don't think the cops get all that background. They get the detective's report saying, "Hey, look, there's drugs in the house. Could be weapons. Be on high alert."
Let me ask you a question.
If you did what we actually talk about, which is where minor stuff would be nothing, and then the more extreme, they actually have to have real evidence. They have more police officers on the evidence side. Making sure they have, because the thing that nobody else talks about is they also executed a knock warrant on the other side. They end up getting into the place and arrest the people and find guns and drugs and all the other things they were supposed to find.
That's where they should have went first.
They had the addresses mixed up.
No, they did. They did go there first. That was one of the that's one of the misinformations out there. They actually went there first, but you're talking about a matter of minutes. They went to 2 different locations. They did actually get these people first, but these people were still going through with it. Again, because they thought, and we know, the 3 of us know this to be true, that there are places where they'll have the drug house and then the safe house that has certain things in it. But the police were wrong. The investigator was wrong. And to me, as I looked at the report, again, do I tend to believe Breonna Taylor was involved? Yes. Do I think, of course, she deserved to die? No, hell no. Okay. And I don't even think what she did was, again, this would have been fell in kind of the minor fine area. And since they should have had better intel of who Kenny was, the fact he's just there, that, I mean,
there was a whole
he didn't do anything. I mean, I don't believe he was involved.
And he's a licensed gun carrier, so if they would have done some intel on him, they would have known that he could have potentially had a gun that he's licensed for.
You had one last question for us.
So this whole thing, I'm just tired of the false equivalency that people make, where immediately their response is, well, that guy fell asleep in a Wendy's parking lot. He didn't deserve to get shot to death. It's like, well, you're leaving out like 100 different things.
And at the same and that's fair. And at the same token, you know, you got people that just automatically want to say, well, hey, you know, Breonna Taylor was a drug dealer, so when you play shitty games, you get shitty prizes. It's a little insensitive.
That's a different circumstance.
You do not know for 100% if she was a drug dealer. You just don't know it. And they had shitty intel to begin with. The warrant was janky to begin with.
Was she a drug dealer?
Was messed up. The
Probably
whole,
not.
I'll tell you this.
I think we had more time. If they were,
I think we have way more proof that Breonna Taylor was a drug dealer than any of these incidents have been based on race. We have way more evidence that Breonna Taylor.
I'm not saying she was the main man, but she was collecting some cash,
going back and forth, and we know how drug dealing works.
So we don't know that for 100%. Look, I'm going to tell you.
No, we don't know it for 100%. We don't.
So we can't.
We don't know that guy put his knee on his neck because he was black. We might assume that because, well, he wouldn't do it to a white guy, even though we don't know that either.
Well, let me ask you a question.
There's a lot of assumptions to be made if we're going to say that. To me, she definitely, at a minimum, knew that she was in a drug. I mean, in a situation that if she was my daughter, I would have told her, this is not a good idea for you, honey. I mean, did she deserve to die again? I can only say it a million times.
Of course. And just really quick to touch on Chauvin with his knee on the neck. You know, and then I have a question for you. Chauvin with his knee on the neck. You know, no, we don't know 100% that was race-based. But when you look at the other 18 open cases that he had on him, all against minorities. With that being said,
all his things weren't against minorities.
There were two of them that weren't. There were two against white people.
We know he was an overzealous cop.
He would go on the Indian reservations. He was harassing Indian people. He shot an Indian kid. He shot another black guy in the stomach.
No one's debating.
I'm not supporting Derek Chauvin or whatever his name is. I told myself.
I'm just saying you don't have to get. You can take a hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
An intelligent guess, and say based on his history, he probably had his knee on the neck because he was black. Based on his history. That's just another side note. The question I had for you is because we don't know if it was race-based, right? Breonna Taylor. We don't know if it was race-based. Do you think, and be honest, same apartment complex, predominantly white, Breonna Taylor's white. Do you think it would have went down the same way, honestly?
If I popped off a warning shot, someone's getting shot in my house. Guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the question is, it depends. So if you're talking about a white apartment complex, let's say it's in a trailer park. Does the same thing happen? Yes. If you're talking about a condominium complex in Alexandria, maybe not. You know,
that's my point. Thank you. That's my point.
Wealthier area, maybe not.
So and again, and you're exactly right. And I'm glad you made that distinction too, because it doesn't just have to be black or white. It very much so is rich or poor, but we all know that poverty affects black people in this country at a way more astronomical rate than any other race.
It's not fair at all, but cops use previous circumstances in other cases.
Exactly, they do.
And they over-police those areas, so we just came full circle.
Full circle, which is exactly why the lady is saying, let's abolish the police. A lot of times they created more problems for the black community rather than get rid of them. So let's abolish them over 5 years.
Yeah.
And then go. So I'm glad we went through that. We came around full circle.
Let Philly be the first city to do it. Let Philly be the first city to do it and not freaking Annapolis. Yeah, let them try it and see what happens.
Okay, so what we got next now that I sidebarred?
That's all good. That's all good, baby. Hey, so here you go. Kanye is running for president. Holy
Lord.
Shit. What the hell?
Let me get on this one first, Glenn. Let me get on this one first. Okay?
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
First of all, I just want to poo-poo on CNN every chance I get because they're so full of shit. It was just funny. The article that I read, the very first line says, Kanye, this is a quote, Kanye West is taking off his MAGA hat. But if you actually read the whole article, first of all, Kanye's his own guy, okay? But Kanye even says, he says, hey, people are special. I'm not saying Trump is in my way. He may be a part of the way, but Joe Biden, like, man, come on, please. You know, Obama's special, Trump's special. We say Kanye West is special. You got to love him speaking in the third person. Bill Clinton, special. Joe Biden, not special. So my point there is just funny that they immediately make it whether it's a Trump thing or not. I don't think he might like Trump one day, not like one day. I don't think it makes any difference to that. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. So if he does take votes, I would say he's taking votes from Joe Biden, but I think Joe Biden's a really bad candidate. So what do you think, Glenn?
So yeah, just really quick. I mean, I know people are kind of just trying to write Kanye off like this is a non-issue. Let me just say, for one, he technically can still run for president independently. For two, he is officially a billionaire. He has a net worth. That
is after the purchase of the Gap?
No, that was after the Yeezys.
That was
release.
After the Yeezys release. Yeah.
He just bought Gap, right? Or he
just bought the Gap. Yeah. So he is as of, I don't know, this doesn't have a date on it, but I'm reading it right now. Says he has a climbing net worth. So a climbing net worth, what that actually is, that means that I guess he hasn't officially hit this number yet, but within this year, he will officially be worth $3.66 billion. That is like crazy. Yeezys, I guess, are just blowing up, and he has the money.
Currently, right now, he's 1.3 billion.
Currently, he's 1.3.
That's enough. That's enough.
He's got a 1.3. He's got a climbing of 3.66. So he has a lot of money. He can afford to fund a campaign. He can afford to run for president. He certainly can afford to really battle with these guys. And I mean, I just don't know. We don't know enough about Kanye's political stances on certain things. I mean, let's just get down to the basics. I mean, is he pro-life, pro-choice? I mean, all these kind of things. I mean, where does he really stand on a lot of this stuff? $1.3 billion. And which is funny because, literally just a year and a half ago, people were trying to say that he was bankrupt and was $57 million in debt. He has now professed his life to God. And now, in his words, God is using him to show off. So he's like, God is showing off with me now. So I think it's pretty cool. Hey, I'm all about that. Hey, that's cool.
So we all know.
Now he is a self-proclaimed mixture of Trump and Bernie Sanders, which really isn't. There's a group there. I think people have denied that.
Sure.
There's a lot of crossover, believe it or not, between outside of the extreme social programs. There's some overlap there. There's some because the libertarians kind of sit in that area.
Yeah, and that would probably be someone like me. Not saying that I'm voting for Kanye West at all. Let me be clear. But, I like to read both sides of the fence and then draw my conclusion. I don't just watch Fox News on this hand or CNN on this hand. I really like to kind of gain all of my information from multiple sources on both sides of the fence and then draw a conclusion. So Kanye does have he does have a voter base. I mean, he does. He does have some people that are supporting him. I talked to a few people.
Quick question, Glenn. Quick question. Sorry to interrupt you, but I gotta ask.
No, you're good.
Because I think the answer is gonna be the same for me. If I have to vote Kanye West or Biden, I'm going Kanye West. Fred, if you had to go, Biden or West.
Kanye West.
And so if you had to go Trump or Kanye West, if those were your options, Glenn, I want to hear it.
You already know, man. I'm going Kanye. I can't
You have 3 votes.
Right there. You know why? Because Trump's rhetoric is just way too divisive for me. I'm able to look at someone like Trump and see that he has done a lot of good. I think the fact that he's not a politician and he does have an unorthodox way of thinking in terms of politics. The fact that he actually stood up to China.
He's not political at all. He's not political at all.
Well, but his ego sometimes can serve him well. It can sometimes serve him well, and I think it did in the case of China, where he finally did decide to put a tariff on all imports coming over from China. What people don't realize, especially the American citizens, is that if he didn't do that, China would own America in 10 years. And when I say that,
China's net worth in the 80s wasn't even $1 million. All right? They weren't even in the millions yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? And all of a sudden,
that's the thing.
Bam!
Because because China doesn't mind work. You know,
They're
America
like graph
produces
goes
zero.
like this. Like they were going
Literally.
up.
They also don't
And then-
mind slavery. I mean,
they don't mind slavery. I mean, hey, dictatorships, it is what it is. And we can't sit there and say how we're so much above slave wages and sweatshops and all these things.
Not when our
we
minimum
send
wage is
our
so
work,
low.
well, that's another thing. But we send our work over there to be mass produced because we know that there's cheap labor over there, so we can't use the sweatshops.
Don't hate the player.
The sweatshops behind closed
doors. Don't hate the player. Hate the game. The guys are only taking advantage of the situation. You know what I mean?
Hey,
like,
we've been doing it the same way. Just like you can't hate somebody that. Or you can't hate me or another business owner that takes advantage
you
of
can't
the
you
tax
can't
code.
come out and say Black Lives Matter, and then you have a sweatshop in Asia, Nike, that just fucking makes shoes for $2. You know what I mean? No, it doesn't work that way.
So the hypocrisy of the whole system.
You can.
Yeah, but there's hypocrisy in the whole system. Even with the taxes, people like Mitt Romney and Trump. Saying that they don't pay taxes even though they're billionaires, multimillionaires, but you really can't they didn't write the tax codes. You can't get mad at them for having half of a brain to take advantage of it because this is a capitalist society. Like if my business makes 10 million and then on my P&L I decide to put 8 of the 10 million back into the business and only keep 2 million for myself as profit, our government is only going to tax me on that $2 million. Why? Because I'm putting $8 million back into a business that's growing. And then that business is going to have more employees. And then the government's number one
but if you put it into the Crowell Foundation, you put it into the Crowell Foundation and then pay politicians out of it and then do speeches and get overpaid, you're hiding money.
And that's how you legally don't pay taxes. But it's set up correctly. Capitalist society, the government's number one form of revenue is payroll tax. That is the number one form. So when you're building a business and it's growing, which means you're going to have to hire more employees, which means you're going to have more payroll taxes coming out of your business, the government compensates you for it. The government incentivizes that. So that's what capitalism is. You can't get mad at the system. What you can get mad at is the hypocrisy, because you do have good companies such as myself who have nothing but employees that are here in America that are American citizens that are paying American taxes. When you start sweatshopping the mass production of your work over to China, and then you're allowing China to make all the money, and then you wonder why we're such in debt to China, and you wonder why America produces 0 pharmaceuticals. We make no medicine. Medicine. It all comes from China.
Crazy.
It all comes from China.
Speaking of
get off my soapbox for a second.
Speaking of taxes, all right, Trump, by 12 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to know whether or not he has to give up his tax returns. All right, because we might not have heard that, but I heard that today. His tax returns is being debated, or it's in the courts right now, depending on whether or not he can get it. They should be able to release it or not.
I brought this up last episode.
Here's what's funny is he's not going to be as rich as he says he is, but he's going to be a lot richer than people who hate him say he is.
I could give a shit less,
guess what?
honestly.
He's not going to pay a lot in taxes every year.
If the tax returns I want to see is all the Senate and the House that came in with a $250,000 salary and is leaving as quadrillion billionaires right now.
I'd like to see how Nancy Pelosi's worth $30 million.
I want to know how that happened.
Only ever worked in Congress.
But speaking of Trump,
I want to see proof that the money that was coming out of the Trump Foundation was being allocated to philanthropic needs and motives and desires, rather than being funneled right back into his own bank account. I want to see the proof of where that money went.
So speaking of Trump,
I think people might be disappointed on that one.
He did meet with the Mexican president today.
Let me point out something that I thought. So Trump met with President Obrador.
Right, that's what I was going to say. There you go.
I thought this was really cool. Like, a lot of people don't understand how negotiations work, and negotiations can be very dark sometimes. And one of the things that happened when people thought, Trump and President Obrador were going to have a really tough time because they were talking about the immigration stuff. Well,
you're going to paper my wall
with the Remain in Mexico policy, which has worked very well. And then what Trump did is kind of like a payback. Now, people might not know this, but he actually went down to Mexico and helped President Obrador negotiate his oil deals to keep their more money in Mexico for the Mexican government so that we could then have a better trade deal with them, which is some 3D shit that we don't have. We haven't had presidents do that kind of stuff. And I thought that was interesting if he hated. And again, I don't think Trump hates this group of people or hates that group of people. I think he wants to win. Period. End of story. So if he's got to if he needs Mexico, it's kind of like playing Monopoly with your kids. And you're like, you give me this one, I give you this one, and everybody get Monopoly, but I'm going to get the best one because I'm trying to win still. And so I just saw that and I thought it was cool because I didn't hear any stories about people talking about how he did help them get that oil deal. And then they're coming back up to sign the deal today. And it looks like it's going to be a great deal. So much better than the NAFTA deal. And the border crossings are down. Now you could make arguments about certain things there. And he has brought up, some concerns about COVID with people coming in and out of the country that way. I don't know if it's really COVID or if he's just trying to maintain his border strength. But
borders for the most part they haven't been completely shut down, but they have been highly restricted off. So, it is hard to cross borders right now, especially getting into America, depending on where you're coming from and depending on who you are.
And didn't they have some crazy thing going on with ICE where I heard some California schools making like a fake class to keep the exchange students in state so they don't have to go home because your visa, you're allowed to be in state if you're going to class. Now that we have virtual classes, you're not actually going, so you can go back home and do virtual classes. So that was another thing in the news today.
Unless you pay for private school, and then once you start paying, you're stuck paying, which is what I'm having a little issue with right now because I don't know what's going to happen with schools and stuff. But another issue for another day.
Same. And really quick, while we're on the topic of Trump and schools, because I think that the deal ultimately for Mexico was a good deal too. I don't really think there's much to debate there. I think it was.
It just.
I think it was well thought out. Not
Trump,
really on the part of Trump.
We know is not political, but he is a damn good. He can get shit done.
Yeah.
I mean, his negotiating skills are.
He's good when it comes to negotiating those deals, and I do think that it's going to be good for both America and for Mexico. With that being said, just on the topic of Trump and schools, Trump is currently forcing his hand. He's forcing schools nationwide to open back up in full scale as opposed to doing the virtual thing. And he's forcing them by telling governors that
he's going to defend. He's going to stop funding them.
He's going to stop funding. He's going to stop federal funding to all schools. I don't know about you guys,
but the states for education.
Yeah, which covers all schools, which covers all public schools. Yep. I don't know about you guys, but here, down south, Georgia, Alabama, I think in Alabama in particular, Governor Ivey just received $43 million in federal funding from the school. So, she could potentially have that taken away if any public schools in the state do not open 100%.
Well, if you're not going, you don't need those funds, right?
See, that's not
the case. What was actually going to happen?
Tell me why.
With that,
Tell me why.
Because what was actually going to happen with that case is that the schools were going to provide each student with a Chromebook to make sure that they had access to be able to learn virtually. All families can't.
Are we talking just from K to 12? Are we talking?
Yeah. K to 12. Okay. So, all parents, all families can't afford these computers. Now, sure, there's programs and things like that, but it would be much easier and way more streamlined if the actual schools were handing out these Chromebooks that were already prepped and screened and ready to go and ready for these kids to learn, as opposed to a kid going to some program, going to a Social Security office, having to fill out some paperwork, wait for weeks. Who knows the other litany of bullshit that comes with that? And then you get in the mail.
There could be some issues with that too.
The computer's not set up. There's the whole curriculum and things like that.
I'm very undecided on this one. At this point, I looked into it today, and I was actually dealing with my son's schooling today, and I was pretty.
Me too.
I thought that the school did a terrible job. I understand that. I'm not saying that they're to blame. This was something that nobody, had been through before, so I get it. But I just thought it was done horrifically. I mean, in the schools around here, for the most part, my feeling was that what they should have done is, if I'm a teacher and I typically work from 9 to 5, I felt like I should have been available 9 to 5. They weren't.
No.
They weren't even available close. Sometimes every other day. And I'm thinking, this person's getting paid the whole amount. And I get it. They've got families of their own. They got other things going on. But this is their job.
They got to homeschool their
They're
kids
getting
too.
paid. And I'm the one in the last 6 months, I'm the only one that taught any of my kids anything. So for that whole 6 months, I was their teacher. Now, I have no problem with that, but I do have a problem with it if they're going to get funded and they're going to keep the money. And then because, first of all, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but when you buy a home, you pay a certain amount. I think it's about $4,000, depending on where you're at. I think
where
I paid
you live,
$4,000. Yes. And that goes into the school fund. Okay. And then every year, as you pay taxes, the local taxes go into the school fund. And so you're paying a certain amount of money for this. And I thought they did a bad job. I thought they should have done a better job. And so there's so many different ways to do it. My concern with the Chromebooks, which I did have a child, I think my daughters in Maryland were able to get Chromebooks, or one of them was, and they rent the Chromebook out. But then you're depending on a child to keep that Chromebook.
That's what I was
and I'm
getting
going to be
at.
honest with you, there's a part of me, if you're
Being
poor,
in IT, adults can't even keep their hardware running. So what happens when you give it to a 9-year-old?
And I think that, again, it's a Trump negotiation tactic. I do think, the reality is, at this point, again, there's so much we don't know, which is what the real problem is. Again, I looked at all the corona numbers today. It's so weird because what I don't understand that I haven't seen is that New York, New Jersey, there's lots of these places where their death count is like nothing now. Like it's ran its course
going up. Cases are going up.
The cases are going up.
No, they're not. No.
Yeah, they are. Cases are going up, but the death cases are going down.
They're not even close to going up in the places that I was talking about. So if we're talking about aggregate as a nation, well, it doesn't matter. If you live in New York, you don't care that the numbers in Alabama are through the roof, right? I mean, you might care intrinsically. I'm just saying it's not going to affect your day-to-day life. So for you to have the same rules in New York when you had, I think I looked it up today, it was like 23 deaths yesterday. 23 deaths in New York. Right. And their numbers have been down like that for a while now. You look at their curve, their cases are way down. Their deaths are way down. Then you look at a place like Georgia, where our cases are high, but our death rate is steady. And then you look at a place like Illinois, I believe it was, where the case, or Texas, where the cases are going up and the death rate has started to now tick up. And so each one of those is different.
Same with Florida.
I think the decision should be based on your
for the
locale.
most part. I'll tell you, I went through the top 10, and only 2 states had rising death rates. Only 2.
Right. There are Texas, right?
So not every state, but a lot of states are seeing an increase in catching the coronavirus because they're testing more.
Well, that's true too. But when you look at it, what it looks like is, it looks like a virus. So it goes through. It's like if your family gets it, right?
It's cyclical.
Everybody gets it, and then the numbers start going down. And I think it's made its way through New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts. Like I looked at Maryland. It's like,
so
Maryland,
the worry is real. The worry is real. No one wants to put their kids in danger, but are they in more harm's way sitting at home?
Yeah,
by themselves.
That's a hard discussion.
Yeah,
there's not even enough data because I'm such a data head to even debate whichever way you took. That's why I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not 100% with the kids staying at home. I don't think it's good. I mean, I have active kids.
Socially, actively, man, no.
Yeah.
Not for kids K through 6 at least. No way.
Yeah. But I'm just
it's rough. It's rough.
I get it.
And I will tell you guys this. Obviously, you both know I had COVID. I had all 6 of my kids here. According to my 2 daughters in Maryland, they said that they got tested. I'll take their word for it. So they both came back negative. Now, I don't know if that means they're negative now. And I have a hard time believing it's so contagious. We're all in the same house. That none of my kids got it, but none of my kids have had any symptoms or anything. I mean, I think my one daughter had a cough for a day. My one daughter had a headache for a day. But nobody's had any fever or sickness. Thank God. So I don't know. And again, I'm not saying that means it's not.
We got a comment. We got a comment from our boy Zach.
Yeah.
Check it out real quick, boys.
Sure.
The schools should take into consideration the complication rates in children, and it's almost non-existent when you talk about reopening schools. So is that even a valid point? Kids don't really get it, right? I mean, that's what we hear, but they can carry it.
They're certainly not in death's danger according to everything.
But I don't really think it's about them. It's not really about them. It's about the teachers, the counselors, the principals, the janitorial staff. So
much more about the staff than the actual kids and stuff. I know people
and bringing it home, to mom, dad, grandma, grandpa.
Certainly be carriers. But I'm just not sure how much we're really stopping this thing. You know, the more I was researching the numbers today, and again, it just looks like I'm a little bit wondering about Florida, because Florida was just the way it's staggered, and the same thing with Texas. But most states it's kind of a curve, and so you think, okay, well, if it runs its course, I don't know if we're dragging it out or if we're helping or if it's going to kind of make its way regardless. Because the argument at the beginning was that it was going to make its way regardless. And so if it was going to make its way regardless, then we're just kind of waiting for this thing. But ICU building, they're saying that ICUs are filling up, which
I heard Texas today. They're pushing the limits. They're still good. But they're getting full.
See, I mean, we've just been talking to my wife. We've come up with a bunch of questions. And I kind of touched on it when we had the doctor on a little bit. But, what happens if a student gets it? Do
you shut down just that classroom and the class has to go for 14 days or?
Exactly. And then not only that, but what about the teacher? I mean, the teacher now has to quarantine for 14 days. I mean, who's going to pay for her salary? Does it come out of her sick time? I mean, nobody's asking these kind of questions.
Yeah.
Would the school hire a substitute for 2 weeks? There's
a lot to be addressed. There's no question about it, man. And this is uncharted territory.
Have you guys heard anything up there? I heard down here they said that they're supposed to have a discussion on June 22nd, but it gets tough because as parents, we have to set these things up for our kids. And for me, I do have one child that I have in private school, and once you start paying for that, that's a wrap. You make one payment, you got to keep paying. So I'm pushing it off because I'm like, I spent 6 months being the teacher and paying them.
Right. You should be paying me. You should be paying me.
It was not the way I wanted it because that's not what I want.
My wife and I talked about it. And I think if they don't go back, you're going to see a lot of folks hiring teachers for their own children. I wish I could do it. Somehow we managed to get them through with crazy grades, like unexpected crazy grades, like good grades.
But everyone did because they were constant, such a joke. My daughter got an 87% A in Anne Arundel County. That's what you do. 86 A.
I don't think Anne Arundel made this public. I don't think Anne Arundel made this real public, Kenny, but as long as you attended and turned in homework, you couldn't get a lesser grade than what you got in the third marking period.
Correct. And because she had straight A's the third marking period, she was lazy to fourth, had all B's, but had straight A's.
Is that seriously how we want our kids Is that seriously how we want our kids to pass? I don't know.
I don't, because I'll be honest with you, even like my 14-year-old son, he got, I don't want to say he got lazy, but I mean, in reality, that's exactly what happened. You're learning online. Yeah. You have, your questions or your tests or whatever you got going on. And then you can just pretty much look up the answers and find it that way. So I know what they're talking about because there are different styles of teaching. What they're talking about now is the interactive internet classroom where you would still be able to see the teacher and the whiteboard and everything. And the teacher can see all of the students.
ADD kicks in, boy. Woo!
Yeah, you're gonna have everybody on Ritalin.
Oh, shit, where was I at?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. And I think the thing about it, the classes would be recorded too, so they could go back. So
juniors and above, juniors and higher education can probably handle the virtual classroom. Fine.
Is your 14-year-old going into the ninth?
Yeah. Yeah, he's going into
Mine is too, and I'm very worried about that because if you get one bad semester in ninth grade,
Right.
you start eliminating colleges off your list. I mean,
Right.
I'm rather concerned about it. I don't know what the answer is, but
It's
I want to
stressful.
start hearing organizations get together and say, hey, we're going to make a determination on this day, but it feels like they can't do that. And if you can't do that, then what are we going to do here? Are we really going to have to teach our own kids and pay, you know? And we didn't get to it tonight, and I know we're short on time. I know this is going to be controversial, but I hope we don't do another stimulus check. I really don't. My fiscal conservative side is just biting at me for spending so much money.
I've heard it's in the works though, Kenny.
I know. I've
Yeah,
heard
it's in the works, and he's trying to have something by the second vacation of Congress,
And but
whatever they
and
call
for
it.
all
like,
fairness
by the
too, I've
13th
heard.
of August.
In all fairness too, I heard also that the IRS might be going bye-bye.
That the IRS might be going
only on set. They're going to get rid of all taxes except the 23% sales tax. We'll talk about this offline.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's something we can definitely talk about on our next episode.
Yep.
Because hey, I'm for an easier tax code. I mean, but they've got to start being fair to single dads, and we'll get into that too. But they've got to. I mean,
they've got to start being fair to a whole list of disenfranchised people.
That's true.
I mean, single dads, absolutely, all across the board. And not to keep bringing race in it, but you got single African American dads that are hurt at a much more disproportional rate than any other single dad. So,
but again, the only problem is once you start getting into that, then you're going to say that this.
I know.
I mean, it might, but proportionally, yes. So if you can do something to even out the proportionality of it,
so
let's
end the show on something good that we can all discuss and have fun with. Let's talk about some sports here. All right.
Yeah.
All right, so the first topic in the sports might be a little controversial. Okay, so I jumped the gun a little bit. DJax. He went off the hook a little bit, made some anti-Semitic remarks. He had what was his name again? Come to his defense, Kenny.
Steven Jackson.
Steven Jackson came to his defense saying, "Hey, look, he's just
Steven Jackson now."
Yeah,
he is Steven Jackson. Yes, he is in the Big Three league now. He is in the Big Three league now, no longer in the NBA. So it is Steven Jackson, but he did come to his defense. So is it anti-Semitic? Is it the truth? What do you got for me?
Can it be both?
Yes.
Here's the thing. So here's what I'm going to say about it, okay? I don't like what he put out. I disagree with it. I would disavow any comments in any kind of support of Hitler, okay? And there's definitely anti-Semitism is real in this country, okay? I don't believe, just like I don't believe that racism is this catastrophic thing that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, that even Black people deal with on a day-to-day basis, that is going to control their lives. I don't think anti-Semitism does the same thing to them. I think it's wrong. I think there's improvements that can be made. But I do kind of laugh at the hypocrisy, because I look at what they say, and I've always done this. If somebody that's white saying something racist, I'm trying to hear it as if, what if somebody Black said the same thing? Is it still racist? Vice versa. Same with Jews, same with, I remember hearing somebody say a Jewish comment one time. This Black guy was like, man, that's so stupid. Why even care about that? I'm like, well, what if it was the N-word? He's like, oh, that was so different. And it's like, well, it depends. It depends who you are. So I do kind of laugh at the hypocrisy, because some of the statements that Steven Jackson actually made was, I know how to love Minister Farrakhan and love Jewish people. Now, I'm okay with that. But I can understand how that's like saying I can love Thomas Jefferson, but he was a slave owner. So you're going to really work in some mucky waters when you start making all the arguments that Steven Jackson made. I could make for every argument we've had over the last 2 months. So it can't be both ways. Like, the hypocrisy is annoying. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. So I don't agree with Deshaun Jackson's comments. I mean, any sort of touting of anything Hitler could have potentially did positive, I'm gonna pretty much flick my nose at that. But again, I do think that there's more to it than just the words that came out of his mouth. But just a quick answer: do I think it was wrong? Yeah, Yeah, I
So
do. I don't think he should have
I
said it. It was anti-Semitic. Even though there was,
I did hear
true.
someone I did hear someone say, "Hey, Deshaun, you should go visit Auschwitz and take a look at the things." But
Yeah.
if people were to
He's a-
remove all that and burn it down, he wouldn't have nothing to look at.
He's a grown man. He knows.
See, that's the thing. It shouldn't be celebrated in the form of a statue or a monument. But if you want to go to a museum and look at history, you should
but
be
that's
able
not
to
a
do
museum.
that.
That's an actual place. They still have the buildings up. They still have all the like the
For sure. And just like we'll still have up Gettysburg, and we'll still have
obviously
where
there's
the
no
battle was
Hitler
fought.
statues. There's no Hitler statues.
Exactly.
There's no SS statues anywhere.
But we got them Robert E. Lee joints flying. So we need to get rid of it.
I think Glenn was going to go here with this, and this is interesting. Somebody brought up, actually, Steven Jackson brought up Riley Cooper. And
he did.
Here's the thing, right? And I actually think what Riley Cooper said was probably more offensive to me.
To me too, for sure.
But to each their own. I'm not Jewish, right? And to be honest, I've had a lot more Black people that I've known closely than I have Jewish friends. So maybe I would feel differently if I was deeper into that history. I don't know. But I think it's interesting because I do think that the timing matters. Steven Jackson tried to bring up the fact that Riley Cooper got a contract extension, but he also got cut the next year. So sometimes contract extensions aren't exactly what you think that they are.
Especially in the NFL, because once you get
come
cut,
off a career year with 8 touchdowns over that next year. And he did do a lengthy apology. I don't ever, to be honest, if I feel like somebody, the way he said it with the hard R, I just feel like that came from a place that wasn't like a different way that I could have seen it. I don't
you can't just
care
apologize
about your apology. First of all, you don't owe me an apology. You ain't say it to me. But, so to me, I wouldn't want to go eat lunch with, I don't have nothing against him. I don't know the guy. Maybe he's different. I'm just saying the way that it came off. But the thing I don't think people are going to want to talk about is I think there's a possibility that Deshaun Jackson, they just paid him a bonus they could possibly get out of having to pay him. And I think it might turn into a money thing. And he is 34 years old at a speed position.
But to his credit, he did come out and apologize with the text and then with the video. And it seemed sincere, regardless
after he came out after he put his first apology, he retweeted somebody that said that all banks are owned by Jews.
Jesus.
You can't apologize and then immediately repost something that is
hence the video message after that.
You're right. The second time, but that's where I'm going with the apologies. But I hope he stays on.
It's kind of crazy. It is.
I will tell you this. I think Deshaun Jackson has the coolest play, a top 3 coolest play.
Where he ran down the end zone.
Return when the coach told the guy, just don't put it to Deshaun Jackson. Then he muffs it. And
then he ran down the goal line for like 3 seconds before crossing the end zone.
And then the time ran out and did
the old Tecmo Bowl move.
I care what your political beliefs are. Again, I'm just watching for football so I can relax my white ass.
Yeah, because I'm tired of watching this damn basketball tournament for $1 million. I need some football. All right, so let's move on to money. Mahomes, the $500 millionaire or something, right? What the hell did he get?
500 million.
Jesus, what's it break down to? Doesn't it break down to like craziness, like per hour?
50 million a year or something.
I mean,
but per hour, it's like fuck. Is
he going to get the 50 million? He's going to get whatever the guaranteed amount is what he'll get. He'll go 7 years out of that contract. If you ask me, I'd have to look at it to know for sure. But I think Mahomes is the face of the NFL. I really do.
Oh, you think?
He's the best player in the NFL. I think that he's cooler than the other side of the pillow. I think he merges people together. He said some things in favor of Black Lives Matter, but I feel like he said it in a way that people go, yeah, I can respect that. I mean, there's an argumentative way to say things, and there's a bringing together people way to say things, and people like Mahomes. He's got all the credit in the world. So good for him.
Yeah.
Make that money. He's a great player. And I wish him the best. So
yeah, I agree with you 100% on that, Kenny. Yeah, I like Mahomes. He hasn't really said anything that kind of rubs me the wrong way. He's very easy
Sounds
to
like
digest.
Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, yeah, ribbit. Yeah, he's very easy to digest. I don't have an issue with him. I definitely think he's worth it. I mean, he did it last year. I mean, if you look at the last 2 games of the season last year, and what they were able to do, how they were able to come back from being down 19.
Should have lost to the Niners.
I mean,
3rd and 26.
I mean, the Niners didn't even have a chance. I mean,
no, they had them. They had them dead to rights. They didn't complete that 3rd down. The game's over.
Dude, you really thought that they were going to complete that? You really thought that they were going to complete that?
No, and they did.
So the question is how many more Super Bowls?
That's what I'm saying. Kansas City completed the 3rd and 26.
How many more Super Bowls do they win?
That's what I'm saying. They didn't get it. Yeah, that's when they didn't get it on them.
How many more Super Bowls do you think they win? How many more Super Bowls do you think they win?
I think they got 2 or 3 in them. I think they got 2 or 3 in them.
If it's 0, it's the worst money you've ever spent.
Correct.
If he breaks his leg,
3. That's my over/under.
If he breaks his leg next week, if he breaks his leg in week 2, then because you already know he's got that.
Got to get 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
More.
All right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
He does a good job. He does a good job of protecting. Yeah, I was thinking at least 2.
At least
at least 2. Yeah. I think they got 2 or 3.
2 more. 2 more.
We can have a debate.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to demand
they have right now. It's definitely I mean, he's done a lot. I mean,
you have
done a lot.
You have
in a very
good
short
players.
Period of time.
You have good players like Sammy Watkins who said, "Screw that! I'm not leaving. I'll take less money. Why would I go play for a sorry ass squad when I got the best quarterback here?" He literally said, "Sorry ass squad."
And a great coach, which we won't get into this, but I did have a buddy of mine call me in the middle of the playoffs last year and say, if Reed loses, he should be out. I'm like, Reed is great. I don't give a damn if he's got 1 Super Bowl. Reed is fantastic.
I've always liked Andy Reid, man. He's always been a class act. So hey, Pat Mahomes, more power to you. Get your money while you can get it. You deserve it. Keep up the good play, man. I love watching you. And yeah, that's where I'm at with that, buddy.
All right, hey fellas, great show again tonight. Let's hit some closing arguments. Who wants to go first for us?
I'll go ahead and kick us off. Sure. So again, thanks for being with us this evening, guys. I just want to say that in terms of Black Lives Matter, I think it's a pretty good idea. I do think that there needs to be a little bit more detail that's outlined, something that's a little bit more cohesive. But to defund rather the police department to the point of abolishment over a 5-year period, while reallocating those funds over 5 years to things that are going to work to reduce crime in that community. Because again, a lot of these crimes are, due to poverty. Poverty really breeds criminality. So I think that it could be a really good thing. I'm anxious to see what happens with that. I know the Black Lives Matter movement in general has become very powerful in what they're doing. And just to touch on it really quick, we didn't really talk about it, but we have talked about it in previous shows where the Black Lives Matter, where their funding is going toward charitable contributions and toward Black communities and things like that. Blue Act is handling or processing all of their donations, but the expense report that you see on the Black Lives Matter movement is the Blue Act expense report. So I think they should do a better job in just clearing that up, or maybe making sure that the Black Lives Matter expenses are shown appropriately on the site rather than the Blue Act. Blue Act is a politically funded party that helps to fund the Democratic Party. So, with that being said, a lot of questions are going to come up about schools. We're going to go ahead and chomp into it. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. I hope you all have a great week, and we look forward to being back on Friday. Kenny?
All right. So I'll speak a little bit to what we talked about tonight. My hope is that when people debate and people have discussions, you might not want to take the easiest route. Have the actual discussion. Very rarely in this country are people so blinded that they can't see false equivalencies. Okay. Most people in this country do not believe that one incident means you should lose your life. but there's complex thought as to why there's certain issues that do exist. And maybe by people listening to people, instead of trying to brand people as a certain type of person that you want to convince yourself that they are so that you can be the person of justice, when that's not the reality. Okay, let people have discussions and actually have true conversations. And I hope that we'll get better at that as a country. Maybe in a future episode, we will talk about the funding, because there are some issues that I have with Black Lives Matter and their funding and how much money that they get from liberal politicians to refunnel money. So we can have that conversation on a different day. I do want to hope that, as Americans, again, having open discussions, I do hope that we can discuss some policing things, which really starts with less laws. We really need to attack the laws. So my hope is that everybody here, if you think that all these small laws are helping you, take a step back and take a look at how many lives have actually been destroyed over small little piddly things that should not have been a part of it. So with that being said, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming out tonight and watching the show. And we'll continue to do the best we can for you guys. Thanks a lot.
Awesome, guys. Awesome. Another great show, America. We definitely appreciate you. Hey, and not just America, anybody tuning in from around the world. We love all y'all and we appreciate it. Listen, we're in our infancy. We're just getting this thing started. This is only episode 16. So we're learning on the fly here. We're just trying to show you that, hey, look, we can have different viewpoints. We can argue till we're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, we got to respect each other's opinions. It's all about love. It comes from a place of love. We got to learn from one another. All right. Your view is obviously different than my view. I don't live your life. You don't live mine. You don't know what I go through. I don't know what you go through. So at the end of the day, it's nothing but love. Just remember that, everybody. Hey, we can always bring up something that we don't agree on. But after we don't agree on it, let's just come back and circle back and say, hey, look, we can agree to disagree, but I still love you. All right. And that's where we're coming from, America. We love you. We'll see you episode 17. Again, if you need to hit us up, hit us on the email, contra.dictions@us@gmail.com. We got contra.dicks on IG, contra.dicks on, IG and Twitter. We got our YouTube channel up. So anywhere you want to hit us up, please, we'll be more than happy to respond. Again, we love y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Come back live with us on Friday. We'll see you then. God bless America.
Wash your hands.
That's right.